So you may be cursed with the knowledge of who Alyssa Milano is. Now, Alyssa Milano is a pretty certified moron. She is very, very stupid. She's probably one of the dumbest liberal pundits I have in the hierarchy. She's somewhere around a Whoopi Goldberg. So she's somewhere in that area in terms of just intelligence and understanding. You guys remember when she was pushing the sex strike in response to the possibility of Roe v. Wade being overturned? That was got laughed at by literally everyone. Nobody was in agreement with that. That was pretty hilarious. Um, so she actually sent out a tweet thread, which eventually resulted in her complaining that she doesn't have as many viewers as Joe Rogan. So it starts out saying, "I've got a lot of words tonight. Can I vent?" And I'm not going to read to you all of these tweets, but basically it's just a bunch of pent up anger about the injustice, talking about, all the people who voted for Donald Trump and, how bad Trump is and all this stuff, which he is pretty horrible. And, there's some legitimate stuff going on here that she's pissed off about, of course. Um, Talking about, unmarked vehicles, arresting protesters and stuff like that. She's getting mad about, her kids potentially being sent to schools during this pandemic that is going on currently. And so what she ends up doing is, and by the way, I want to say, she says that she feels bad for the older generation, that they fought their entire lives to just chill and enjoy their grandkids. Hilarious. She then ends up talking about, and it's funny because this kind of intro to it is, Native Americans have to fight to get a major sports team renamed. So it's all talking about other things. But then it all comes full circle to her. And she says, "We live in a world," quote, where, capitalized, "where Joe Rogan's podcast has tripled the listeners as mine." Dear God. So I wasn't even aware Alyssa Milano had a podcast. So I'm actually not sure what the viewership numbers on her podcast are. I would say it's probably a pretty good indication that they're not too great, considering that I'm not aware that it exists. Typically, I'm in tune with that kind of stuff. Even if I don't listen to the podcast, I'll know that it exists. But I can guarantee you, whatever the numbers are, there's no chance that Joe Rogan only has triple her viewers. Joe Rogan's podcast is probably the most popular podcast you've got to talk about. With Joe Rogan, the thing is, you have YouTube views when it comes to the full podcast episode. Then you have the YouTube video views of the clips taken from that podcast episode. Then you have all of the various audio formats that he uploads it to. I don't know if he still uploads it to Vimeo or not, but I think he uploads it to iTunes and Spotify, and obviously he's going to Spotify now. And I believe he's on Stitcher and iHeartRadio. You have to add all those up. That's a lot of listens. And he's got the most popular podcast, and he's now going to be moving to Spotify in exchange for $100 million and moving to Texas to kind of save some money off of taxes. But it's hilarious how it all comes back full circle to the kind of narcissistic, my podcast. It's just hilarious to see. But Joe Rogan, while, he can say some quite dumb stuff, and I'd say he's made some kind of dumb comments about social distancing and stuff like that during this time for sure. But, at the end of the day, he does have on a flurry of different guests. It definitely is interesting. He'll have on Bernie Sanders and Ben Shapiro and all these different kind of ideas, and it's interesting to see Joe Rogan's ideas as well. He definitely is progressive in a lot of ways, but then he can also be kind of weird in some ways. But this is pretty hilarious. Let me know your thoughts about this down below.